Welcome to UCF in Print. I'm Charna Davis. We see the ultimate success story, a happy beginning thanks to hard work, dedication, and faith. Today, meet the man who, with words and pictures, is telling the world this amazing story of the people you just saw, the people of a rural Haitian community. Meet Kevin Meehan. Thanks for joining us. Now, this was part of your documentary, Planting Seeds of Hope, about this particular area. These people dancing, did you happen upon that? Is this something that just would happen in those areas?
Well, it does happen in the countryside in Haiti. It's called a compas band. That's the group. The dance that they're doing is called a contra dance, which goes all the way back to the colonial era, but they still do it where you have almost like a square dance, where you have 4 couples, and they each take turns going into the middle and doing their dance steps and then retreating back to the edge.
It's the perfect setting to telling this story because their life, their world is so incredibly different than ours. They don't have kids sitting in front of video monitors playing video games. They don't go to the movie theater or the mall. This is their culture and their entertainment.
Yes. I would say that, and what was nice to me about shooting that scene was that you saw both the grandfather and the great-grandfathers dancing, but you also saw these young boys, 2 boys dancing with each other who were, let's say, 8 or 10 years old at most, learning the same, learning the same dance steps.
And enjoying it just as much.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Probably the best part.
Absolutely.
Now, you're a professor of Caribbean Studies. Now, you probably had not, as a little boy, said, this is what I want to grow up to be, but you chose a Zora Neale Hurston book to write a thesis on.
Yeah.
And you tell me there's a passage that pretty much changed your life.
Well, I think that the whole book does. And the book is called Tell My Horse, Voodoo in Life in Haiti and Jamaica. And it's a book that Zora Neale Hurston wrote while she was on an extended fieldwork visit in the Caribbean. And she spent 2.5 years in Haiti and Jamaica, funded by the Guggenheim Foundation. And while she was there, she also wrote her novel that she's most well known for, which is Their Eyes Are Watching God.
A big TV movie.
Yes,
a famous movie star.
But she also wrote a very interesting piece of nonfiction, which is the book Tell My Horse. And in graduate school, I had read everything by Hurston in a seminar except Tell My Horse. And so I wanted to concentrate on that for a master's thesis. And then after that, I was so intrigued by what she had written and her experiences that I wanted to go and see the place that she had written about.
Do you want to read the passage?
Yeah.
And show how, maybe it'll move somebody listening, probably. And she is really a treasure from our area as well.
I think what I liked about most in this book was the title, Tell My Horse, is a little bit confusing, obscure, what have you, but it's actually the English translation of a Creole phrase, Parle cheval, which is the phrase that somebody says when they are mounted or possessed by a particular Haitian spirit or loi. And it's a spirit by the name of Papa Gay Day. And so in a sense, Hurston is also saying that she has been possessed by the spirit of Papa Gay Day. And so what I wanted to read was her description of who is Papa Gay Day. And she says, great phrase, gods always behave like the people who make them. And when she's writing about Gay Day, she says that he is the spirit, the Haitian spirit of social protest. And she says, nothing in Haiti is quite so obvious as that this loi, or spirit, is the deification of the common people of Haiti. The mulattoes give this spirit no food and pay it no attention at all. He belongs to the blacks and the uneducated blacks at that. He is a hilarious divinity and full of the stuff of burlesque. This manifestation comes as near a social criticism of the classes by the masses as anything in all Haiti. And so I really like that as a kind of anthem for her writing. And I had to go and investigate for myself what was behind this book, which was written in the 1930s, but the country is still there, and
And a lot of that is still there. A lot of the culture and the history and the class distinctions and
Sure.
And show us this photograph that you brought back from Haiti, and then we're going to talk about the documentary.
Well, it's a direct link from this photograph to how I ended up in Fondwa in the countryside. But this is a piece of graffiti that is on the wall outside the church Saint Jean Bosco, which is the church where Jean-Bertrand Aristide, who was the president of Haiti twice, in 1990 he was elected, and then he was elected again in 2000. But before he was a presidential candidate, he was a parish priest at this church. And so when I went to Haiti in 1991 for the first time, he had just recently left this parish, and there was this piece of graffiti, and it says, it's a history lesson, and it says in Creole, 1791, Esclaves te leve campe, slaves rose up. And that's a reference to the Haitian slave revolt of 1791, which led to the founding of the country, first independent black republic in the world, and the second republic, independent republic, after the United States. Then the second line in the graffiti says, 1915, Kako te resiste. Well, in 1915, the U.S. Marines invaded the country and occupied, and they were not received very well, and there was a peasant revolt in the countryside, and the peasants were known as the Kakos, which is actually a kind of Creole reduction of the word cacique, which was the word for the old Taino chieftains in the pre-Columbian era. So the Indian chieftains were called caciques or caciques, and then you creolize it and boil it down, and you get the word Kako. And that's what they called themselves in 1915, the Kako Revolt, and they resisted the U.S. Occupation. Then the third line is bringing it up to the 200-year anniversary of the slave revolt, 1991, Mas peuple doit organiser, the popular masses have to organize. And so I really like this piece of graffiti because of the very concise history lesson, because it was written in Creole, and because it put the emphasis on the popular organizations in the country, and that was really the engine for historical developments in Haiti, is the popular organizations at the grassroots level, Mas peuple, the popular masses. And in the present day and age, what you have in the city are neighborhood associations, but in the countryside, still the majority of the country is rural. And in the countrysides, it's peasant associations.
You said the word peasant, and we talked about this before. Yes. To Americans, that may sound like it's denigrating. It might sound like it's degrading, but they're proud of the word peasant. It's who they are. It's what they do. They work the land.
Yes, paysan is a proud word even. And when I go to the countryside and I will be walking up and down a hill, you greet somebody and they usually look at me and say bonjour blanc, which sounds like good morning white man, but in Creole, blanc means foreigner. It's the word for foreigner. So bonjour blanc, and the response is bonjour paysan.
You talked about the peasant organizations, and what we're going to take a look at is an overview from your documentary of actually an organization that has gotten together and created a university to change their area.
Yes.
So we're going to take a look at an overview from that right now.
Okay.
I think we started with identifying the needs of the area, and the road was the number one. They gave a lot of items like healthcare, lack of healthcare facilities, lack of education, lack of communication with the rest of the country, like Unatabi Road. And for them, the first priority came out of the road.
Along with the road construction, early efforts focused on capturing water sources for irrigation and raising a community center. Building on this foundation, various projects followed in the first decade: a health clinic, an orphanage, a radio station, and a basic primary-secondary school.
Même si c'est à Port-au-Prince aussi, il y a des universités privées qui ont donné beaucoup de chance. Quand je suis arrivée, il y avait 99% d'enfants qui sont morts de il y avait 99% de mortalité infantile. Et pour maintenant, il n'y avait pas même.
There is so much that this University of Fondwa changed, but it had to start with a road.
Yes.
That's the first thing
Yes.
they needed. You don't realize that we are so jaded here and so spoiled. They needed a road.
Well, it would take the women in the area, it could take them 5 hours to collect the water in the morning. I mean, literally, you spend a third of your day just walking back and forth from your dwelling place to wherever the nearest water source is. With the road being built, and then you know, add in market days when you have to bring your produce to market and how long that takes to go up and down rough mountain trails. When you put a road in, it makes everything a lot more feasible
and then from the road
convenient.
came a clinic and a recreational center, and all these things grew out of it. But the number one thing that they want to do is to educate their people to stay there and make it sustainable, make it a better place.
Part of the reason why people leave the countryside, there are many reasons why you have this depopulation of the countryside, and then where they usually end up is in a slum area in Port-au-Prince, in the capital, which is not a healthy place to be, generally speaking, and not a good dynamic. One of the ways in which people are forced off of the land in the countryside is that if you are a child and you are getting some learning and some education and you want to continue your education, you have to leave in order to do that. And so I know that there was no school whatsoever in 1988 when the Peasant Association of Fondwa began. But they've had a secondary school for a while, for let's say 10 or 15 years. The secondary school has been active and working with the younger children. But to deal with people at the college age, just forget about it. There was never a possibility for retaining those people in the countryside.
And now we have a place, the
Yes.
University of Fondwa. We'll talk a little bit more about it when we come back. We're talking with Kevin Meehan. We're talking about his documentary called Planting Seeds of Hope, about the University of Fondwa in Haiti, the only rural university in Haiti. I understand that part of the plan and part of the agreement is if you are educated in what, agriculture, veterinary medicine?
In small business management.
Small business. If you're educated, you have to stay in your own community for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, you have to give back 2 or 3 years of service after you complete your degree in the area that you come from. And in Fondwa, in the University of Fondwa, there really, I think, are only 3 out of 30 students currently enrolled that are from Fondwa. The students come from all over the country.
It's such a great opportunity for them.
And then return to the villages and areas that they've come from. And they actually are involved in that while they're students also, because they have to do a development project as part of their curriculum, so that they're already working as a catalyst back in their home location. And then with the credentials that they have after they graduate, they probably are able to do a little bit more as far as raising grant money and interacting with partners outside of Haiti.
One of the things that they did in planning is they put a list of things that are important and things that they wanted to be as part of their philosophy, and spirituality is part of that. But another big part is having everybody have a say. It's really a democracy.
Oh, yes.
And we have a part of your video, which is one of my favorites, that shows just how that happens in a rural community in Haiti.
Nearly 20 years since its birth, APF is still a catalyst for sustainable grassroots development. One reason is a strong commitment to democratic ideals among the people of Fondwa. Ideas about what sectors to develop, how to use resources, even the structure of APF, come from the bottom up in daily discussions among peasants. Occasionally, The debate is critical.
Question moi dou là c'est une autre question. Allez après là c'est nous mêmes fondel. Nous mêmes qui fondel. Mais là nous venons fonder, il y a fin fonder, mais faut être capable de protéger nous tout.
Quand il dit moun bagi c'est quoi ensemble avec eux, mais l'école là bagi c'est quoi avec eux. Même les météo l'école là mais comme capable de dire pour dire que camper même pas qu'on a qui ça camper parce que pas. Oui, après c'est bon bagage. Mais jusqu'à même les météo l'école là mais avec ça comme on dit pour me bailler comme l'école là mais pas aide avec eux. Pas aide avec eux.
Such input and the free flow of sharp, critical debate is one of the great strengths of Fondwa and Haitian peasant society in general.
I love that.
Yeah.
You know, at the very beginning, she looks like she's barely listening, but boy, was she listening, and she was going to get her opinion in as well.
Well, the scene for that scene was an interesting one because I was walking around. That's probably the first time I took a camera with me, a video camera to Fondwa, and I was walking all around the valley trying to interview people, and I ended up in the original, that's actually a schoolroom, if you can believe it. That's the original school building.
Really?
And there were 2 students there, and I began talking to the students, and they didn't have a whole lot to say to me, but the man, Mr. Beauvais, walked in and wanted to know what was going on here and started inquiring and scrutinizing, and then pretty quickly I just focused on him in the interview. But he brought Madame Registré in with him, and she was being very quiet. And in my experiences, it takes a long time. You can connect with the men. I, as a man, can connect with the men fairly quickly. But to make contact and establish dialogue and so on, interact with the peasant women, there's like a gender role barrier.
There must be
And
something
to
because
get her to talk was
well,
really
it was. You could tell she was
success.
It was almost like she was trying to decide whether to talk.
Yeah.
And in one of their philosophies, it says respect for women is
yes.
one of the things. So it must be an ongoing issue
Yeah.
throughout
Although
most cultures.
I would say I see respect for the women, no problem there in the countryside. It's just that the women do certain things, men do certain things, and you don't cross those boundaries.
How long were you there doing this? People who don't.
I've been going back and forth to Fondwa since 1991, so probably the longest stint that I've spent there is a month, which is not that long.
And people don't realize when they see TV how many hours it takes
Yeah.
to make a 13-minute documentary.
But the 13-minute documentary is probably the result of six different trips and 6 different shooting video.
And watching it is an experience, but living it is as well. I know that over the years as a reporter and the things I've done, especially I think probably I had to travel to El Salvador and do a story after an earthquake and during the Civil War there. And it probably affected me more profoundly than anything else I ever did. Do you feel the same way about going there?
I think you'll find that statement being made by anybody in this country that has become active in Haitian issues is that you make this trip and then you become enchanted by the people in Haiti, and it's a suffering people in a horrendously impoverished and sick society. But the people are also miraculous, I think, and magical, and you keep coming back because of the impact that the place has, and the chance to work with people like the people that I meet in Fondwa.
The students are older than college students would be here.
Some of them, yes, some of them are. Some of them are like garden variety U.S. aged students. Some of them are in their 30s, some of them are in their 40s.
It says that they want life experience as part of it too, and they bring with them life experience when they come older.
True.
Now, it's just a poor country. Do you have any idea how they afford this?
Some people are able to, there's a lot of scholarships that pay for the tuition. So people on this side, on the United States side, are active in, many of them have church groups that will sponsor a student. Some people have student organizations like Haitian student groups in the United States that raise their money and put the money together for tuition for one of the students for a year. You have individuals in the United States that are supporting. Some of the students do put the money together and somehow are able to come up with the tuition dollars to support themselves.
It is so important to them, and the things they learn, because it's mostly mountainous in Haiti, and I think
Yes.
like 60% of the people work the land and work those mountains. So that's a very hard life.
Yes.
And they don't have the access to the technology, the information without this.
No.
Now, you had mentioned that a big part of this could not happen without people from all over the world coming to teach them.
That's right. So we have, if you go to Fondwa and you look at the university faculty, you'll see people from the Caribbean, you'll see people from France, you'll see people from Canada, you'll see people from the United States, and you'll see a good contingent of Haitian faculty members also. And I think that the core of it is always going to be the people in Fondwa. That's going to be the core, but they have done a very successful job, I think, of reaching out and building international networks that can bring some of the resources from the global north to that location in the global south.
If people want to help out, if somebody has expertise from our area, from any area, they don't have to give up their life. They don't go there forever. It's
No.
not like you're taking a teaching position at an American university, is it?
No. I think that UCF has finally been able to establish a partnership with the University of Fondwa, and that was a hurdle for developing successful partnerships between UCF and Fondwa, because there really wasn't a parallel institution to link up with. But now there's the university. Now we have an agreement in place, so we can begin to be more serious about writing grants for things like solar electrification, for things like distance learning, for things like just basic studies to find out what the impact of all the development is in Fondwa. And we need those kind of data in order to really understand what the impact is and what the successes and the failures are of all of the different development projects. Those are things that academics at UCF and really anywhere, but I guess I would say I'm at UCF and I would love to connect with my colleagues there, so I'm putting the emphasis on that. But you write a grant, you spend 2 weeks in the field or 2 months in the field and collect your data and analyze the data. And we are making it possible, I think, even to do shorter things. You could go for a week and teach a class or a seminar, or do some training if you are a distance learning specialist and we're successful in getting that in place. You can go and do some training and teach the students and faculty at University of Fondwa
And probably
how to use
take
the
away
distance learning.
a lot more than you give.
Oh yeah, for sure. We also have spring break programs. In the past I've taken students to University of Fondwa for
really?
spring break, and so that it can be something as short as that or as long as a sabbatical year, and anything in between.
Did it surprise you? You get in a plane and you're there so quickly, and it couldn't be further away from what we're used to.
Well, I remember back in the 90s when President Aristide was actually after he completed his first term of office in 95, he was on an AOL chat room being moderated by Charlene Hunter-Gault, who's one of my favorite broadcasters and public figures. And one of the things that he said is always stuck in my mind, which is that when you're in Florida, you're closer to Port-au-Prince than you are to Washington, D.C. So
true.
yeah, we are very, very close. And to me, Haiti is we're in the Caribbean. In Florida, we're in the Caribbean, and that's just the fact of the matter, really.
Has it changed your life personally? Being involved with this, going down there, meeting the people?
Yeah, of course it's changed my life. I would say that I learned Creole, which is something I could never have
I noticed.
imagined.
I was wondering if you just translated that with a dictionary, or you know Creole.
I mean, and to me that's a great gift and a blessing to be able to speak Creole. And I think that when you see the level of poverty in Haiti, that is a wake-up call, and you see that we live in a world where there are imbalances that are beyond anything that you could imagine if you don't make a trip like that, and actually see that up close. I think that it makes me more disciplined in some way, that I see what people struggle with in Haiti, then it means that when I come back to the United States, I have to really work harder at whatever it is that I do here, because no matter what I'm doing, I'm not facing the same mountain that any given person in Haiti is facing, and that is a change, I would say.
And yet they dance.
Oh yeah, well they're the culture is the thing that usually is what enchants people about the country. The music and the dancing and the food and the storytelling and the joking and the conversation and all of that is it enriches life. While there might be material poverty, the cultural wealth is unbelievable in the country of Haiti.
And that's what we can take out of this.
Yeah.
Kevin Meehan, thank you so much. The documentary is called Fondwa, Haiti, Planting the Seeds of Hope. Thanks for joining us, for sharing this amazing story with us and reminding us that the joy of life is something we all can have.
Thank you.
I'm Charna Davis-Wiese. Thank you for joining us on this edition of UCF in Print. We'll see you next time.